Hey everybody, today we are talking about the tier 4 unit changes coming with the Griffin beta update. The Griffin beta update is for Age of Wonders 4 that it will go live with the upcoming Archon Prophecy expansion, but you can access the Griffin beta update right now. If you want to know how to do that, just go to Age of Wonders 4 on Steam and you'll see a news post and it'll give you instructions how to do that. Now, the Griffin beta update is a very large balance update to the game. Too large, in fact, to do realistically in one video. I did one video kind of overviewing it, but if you want to see the exact specifics of any changes and why these changes are massive, I'm going to have to go into specific videos talking about it, because I could just make one 3-hour long video, and for the most part, I don't think anyone will actually make it through it. So splitting that content up into multiple, maybe hour to 40-minute videos, I think is just generally going to be better, and I think you guys would just generally overall prefer that, right? So in this video, we are going to be talking about the very large tier 4 unit changes coming in the Griffin update, because this changes a lot of the meta and generally just makes the game considerably better, and I think will give the game significantly more longevity towards having more, well, as I said, build diversity, and just more longevity towards having the ability to create builds that maybe even if they're not top tier are near top tier, because the devs have actually seen to, you'll see throughout the video, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. So I need to split this video into, I'm gonna say 3 different topics. Talking about the tier 4 unit changes is going to make up like 95% of the video, but first off we need to talk about why nerfs are good, then we need to talk about the Pyre Templar and the Stormbringer. So why are nerfs good? People generally hate nerfs, and I think I've tried to be a very vocal voice saying that nerfs, no, they're not bad, actually they're quite good. Why are nerfs good? Nerfs keep the meta from power creeping. When the meta power creeps, the game can slowly become a different game that you don't enjoy, either through the game pace increasing or the damage increasing or the game just slowly playing differently. See Yu-Gi-Oh! For comparisons here. Generally just having so much power creep in the game can just generally make the game slowly worse over time, or at the very least play differently than how you wanted. In addition, whenever you don't nerf, you end up in a situation where the best things stay at the top, and then in order to make new things, you need to make things that are power creeped. But then whenever you do that, you need to make new things that are power creeped, new things that are power creeped. If you never nerf, you never actually add more content to the game. You actually just slowly change the content. Because, for example, no one would ever go back and use the Living Fog if the Living Fog, when the game was new, wasn't very good. And then, even after he wasn't very good, the developers just kept power creeping new and new things that just slowly made him worse and worse and worse, right? There would just be no reason to go back and use a unit like this ever. And even things that used to be good or were almost good would slowly just get power creeped out and be bad. So what happened then in Age of Wonders 4 that I'm advocating for some nerfs, and why I think these are quite good? Because the Stormbringer and then the Pyre Templar released, and these did some very large damages to the game's long-term health. Now, do make sure to like, do make sure to subscribe, do make sure to leave a comment down below on anything I'm talking about. Just say hi if you never say hi. Also visit my streams and just say hi. I see a lot of people actually go into my comments when I'm streaming and they're like, sorry to bother you. You guys never bother me. If I'm streaming, even if I'm streaming a different game, just ask. I try to do my best. You know, sometimes I don't see your comment. Don't take it personally. Sometimes I'm just, but you know, ask anything, do anything, just say hi. That helps. Anyway, let's go back to the video. You guys are never annoying. Just, you guys, I see this comment so many times. Sorry for being annoying, but, and it's like, bro, you're not annoying. Like, you're in a live stream just asking me a question. Like, you're not annoying, you know? Anyway, Pyre Templar and Stormbringer. Okay. When Age of Wonders 4 launched, there was not that many builds. Not really. Tier 4 racial units were also pretty rare. The general idea was that, for those of you who don't play Age of Wonders 4, every time you go up a unit tier, you get stronger. Shocking. I know a tier 4 unit on average is stronger than a tier 3 unit. Now, racial units are of your race for your faction. They will get buffs from any racial transformations that you do. They will get buffs from generally unit enchantments that you do. There's no mythic racial unit yet, at any rate. So generally racial units are stronger at scaling. So racial units were typically capped at tier 3. Most didn't go into tier 4. Well, they released the Stormbringer, then they released the Pyre Templar, which were racial tier 4 units. These massively broke the game's balance, and for the longest time, the only realistic viable builds you could do for late game were Stormbringer and Pirate Templar. I'm going to call this the dark ages of Age of Wonders 4. Despite that kind of being when I started making content on this game, one of the reasons I do long pauses in between content is because at the end of the day, you kind of run out of builds, you run out of fun things to do. There's not much more for you to go over because at the end of the day, you'd kind of be lying in videos if you were saying, here's a build that can compete with Stormbringer, here's a build that can compete with top Pirate Templar, because like, well, no, they can't. These are just the best, right? And Pirate Templar, I have a lot of hate to Pirate Templar, which I think is finally at an end, because Pirate Templar kind of ruined the game with his Order Tide shenanigans. Not a particularly very high damage unit. He was just a unit who, through just being tanky and being in a blob of health and just slowly pushing forward over the battle, he'd just win. It wouldn't be creative, it wouldn't be unique. He would just blob forwards and win in a giant blob of Pirate Templars. You can say that my Knight build, which a lot of people have copied, when we play multiplayer games, I see a lot of people doing my Knight build now, which I find funny. It is a good build. It's a very fun build too if you pull it off right. But I see my Knight build kind of doing the Order Tide. I don't know. Order Tide is when I'm going to describe Order Tide is when you just use the Order Tomes and get really tanky and just march forwards. Kind of just the dumbass march, the Necron march forwards. And at any rate, Pirate Templar was for the longest time the Order Tide dude, and people got very frustrated at him because it was quite difficult to ever beat him. So what did they finally decide to nerf on Pirate Templar? And we're not only going to talk about Pirate Templar, we got to talk about a lot of support changes they did for Stormbringer and Pirate Templar, because you might notice Stormbringer is technically buffed. So how did he get nerfed? We'll talk about that. Pirate Templar got nerfed himself. How? Number one, he no longer ignites by default. He must now get an enchantment in order to ignite. Now that does come from, I believe, his tome synergy, so it's not a total loss. But by default, if you just get the tome and you get Pirate Templar, he will no longer ignite on his basic attack. This also makes the synergy he has with the tome of Pyromancy a little bit weaker. He won't be getting just 20% more damage for existing. In addition, Searing Blades itself was nerfed to plus 10% damage, so even if you do a Searing Blades Pirate Templar, it's a little bit weaker. This does, of course, hurt Pirate Templar's ability to scale. In addition to that, the Tome of the Cleansing Flame, which has been a thorn, I imagine, of the developer's side for a long time, Tome of the Cleansing Flame has finally been nerfed. It no longer just automatically gives you the Flame Herald's Consecration in every battle just for being picked. Instead, you now need to either build a Pyre Shrine and fight within a city's domain, or cast Consecrating Firestorm in order to get the Flame Herald's Consecration buff. So you now need to actually work towards getting Flame Herald's Consecration, which makes the Pirate Templar a good bit weaker because the tome he's in is a bit weaker. Now, of course, you can still get Flame Blessed Champion, and Flame Blessed Champion will still affect the Pirate Templar, so he will still be able to ignite on his basic attacks, but he will do it with a bit more work. Fellas, you guys who think it was just old nerfs, it was not old nerfs. Flame Blessed Champions does create the Cleansing Flames on the target hex automatically. Now, you don't need to stack Burning to 5, so Pirate Templars are now based way more on just creating a shitload of flame in front of them and lighting everything on fire, which is overall a good thing, but they're significantly weaker at just generally getting a bunch of stuff for free and winning the game because there's, I don't know, they're God's special boy, I guess. At any rate, the Pirate Templar also had his resist reduced from 6 to 4, so fire damage doesn't get memed as hard. It still gets memed a little bit, but it doesn't get memed as hard when you fight a Pirate Templar. Now, Stormbringer, a lot of people disliked when Stormbringer got nerfed. The Storm Trident damage was nerfed from 24 to 20, and then his defense was reduced to 3 from 4. Now, this was overall fine, totally fine, and Stormbringer was still viable. But they've undone those nerfs and instead directly nerfed what made Stormbringer so broken. What did make Stormbringer so broken? Well, it was really just the synergy with the tomes. The tome synergy was just too good. Lightning Torrent has been nerfed from -3 lightning resist to -1, which I have seen some complaints from people for, but I mean, it's a tier 1 global spell. Like how, you know, a tier 1 tome shouldn't be giving you a spell that even into the hyper late game is one of the best spells in the game, right? Like that's just silly. In addition, like all the other blade effects, Lightning Blades has been nerfed from plus 20% damage to plus 10%. That's why I need to do videos going over these topics more in depth instead of just doing like one long 4-hour video on this stuff, because talking about, you know, how have we increased the meta diversity, why were these nerfs good, like talking about this stuff, it's gonna take me a while to go over, right? At any rate, this has made Stormbringer significantly more balanced, and because of that, they have now managed to undo some of the buffs they did to Stormbringer, because, or sorry, they undid all the nerfs they did to Stormbringer, and Stormbringer is now just, I mean, he's good on his own. He doesn't have to go the Tome of Evocation to be relevant anymore, which does increase build diversity. Pyre Templar is also, he's a little bit weaker, by default, I would say, but you can still put in a little bit of work and get him to exactly where he used to be. There's one more nerf they did do for Pyre Templar, and there's one more nerf they did do for Stormbringer that went a little bit under the radar. Lifesteal can now only proc once per attack. It no longer procs per target hit, it now procs once per attack. This means that Pyre Templar AoEing into a pack of enemies no longer heals 45 health. Likewise for Stormbringer. So that means that these units are significantly less able to just completely stall out a battle indefinitely by healing to full every turn, which, you know, just makes them significantly more balanced. So those are the nerfs. Now let's talk about tier 4 changes. I do think that tier 4 changes are a good thing. Some people might complain about some of this stuff, but I think it's overall a good thing. Basically, there's I can't remember who said it, but I remember one developer, and this must have been like 10 or 15 years ago, said you have to design for the game as it plays. You can't design for the game that you want it to be. It has to be the game that it actually is. I don't think the developers intended tier 4 units to become hyper late game. I don't think they intended for them to be your entire army. But at the end of the day, you know, that's just how the game plays. And if tier 4 units are becoming the majority of your army, then the developers just need to balance the game for how the game is, not how they want the game to be. So tier 4 units have been buffed so that significantly more of them are viable. And by some of them, I mean almost all tier 4 units, other than the chaos ones, weirdly. So Transmuter and Geomancer were not buffed. That's because in the last expansion, we did a big overhaul on battle mages, and seeing as these were battle mages, they haven't been buffed. They're still living large off last expansion's changes. Tyrant Knight, we're going to start with Tyrant Knight because I've done some videos playing with Tyrant Knight. He has seen some rather significant buffs. Now, I do remind everybody that this is a beta. Any of these changes can be changed again, or unchanged, or rechanged, or buffed again, or anything at all. So if in a month these changes aren't how they are in the live version, then that's just how it is, right? Don't get too upset over it. Some of these changes are obviously a bit more experimental than other changes, and you just need to keep that with a grain of salt. So the Tyrant Knight has seen 3 different, actually fairly significant buffs. Number 1, he got a completely new ability, Oppress. Now, at first I looked at Oppress and I was not really that amazed by it. I thought it was like kind of a waste of my time to even look at. Oppress is a 90% chance for an enemy to outright lose 25% morale. Sorry, 25 morale. On a failure, they lose 10 morale automatically. Then they also take 2 status vulnerability automatically as well. Now that's the important part. This means if, like how I often was using it, if you have multiple Tyrant Knights oppressing the same unit, your oppression becomes oppressive. The first time you hit them, you might not get the 25 morale loss. The second time, they're going to have an automatic -4 status vulnerability, because this is -2 per stack, so you're going to have 2 stacks, it's -4. So the second one will have -4 status resist on the enemy, and the third one will have -8 status resist on the enemy. And of course, if you hit them with potentially a fourth one, they'll have -10 status resist. This means that oppressing one target can basically just hard force it to be routing on your turn. This sets up some of the spells that you can actually use in the game, some of the abilities you can use in the game, and overall it's just a way to hard force some harder targets to just break. It also means that if the Tyrant Knight is fighting particularly tanky enemies who they can't beat in fair combat, they can try to beat them in unfair combat. If you are beating enemies you can beat in fair combat, then you're just demoralizing charge strike spam them and it crushes them mercilessly. The other two changes you're probably seeing here are Armor of Despair. As an enemy starts breaking and getting to routing, this unit becomes tankier and tankier against it. So if the enemy army is already at low morale, then they just can't really fight back. It is kind of a win more ability. I'll get at that. If you're already winning a fight, this just kind of reads, win the fight even harder, which is... yeah, it's a fair complaint. It doesn't do anything that major in a regular game, right? But it does help you win more. Unyielding is the other buff here that is actually fairly significant. Possibly, in fact, probably the most significant buff. Other than one change, it's probably the most significant buff here. At the start of this unit's turn, it dispels one negative status effect. Now, this is two changes. One, whenever you dispel a negative status effect, it will always prefer mind control. So this unit literally can no longer be mind controlled. In addition, it just becomes significantly harder to keep debuffs on, and Tyrant Knight armies that aren't even specialized in being tanky will now just be harder to CC, harder to debuff, and generally they're tougher to deal with. Now, Unyielding can be seen as a bit oppressive, even more oppressive than literally oppress, so we'll see if this stays here. I'm 50-50. They might give it a different buff, they might keep it here. Honestly, I'm fine with either. It is pretty strong though. It does make the Tyrant Knight significantly more powerful. Now, in addition to that, if I look through here, it doesn't really matter who I pick. If I look through here, you can also see that they encouraged morale builds by morale has been removed. Okay, we can't actually see it right here. I don't know what I'm showing here. Bonus morale has been removed from the oh wait, actually I know how to see this. Ambitions, this stuff. The as you continue to get more renown, you will no longer give morale bonus to your army. So that's a lot of morale that's gone from armies, which is good. Morale was just way too high to possibly remove all of it. So with morale being removed from renown and the Tyrant Knight himself being buffed, morale builds are doing significantly better and will probably end up becoming a staple that you will have to actually play against. You won't just beat morale builds anymore by simply existing, you'll actually have to try to beat it. In addition to that, there were some buffs done to, I'm not going to go too far into these. I'll probably make an entire video on morale builds because there's a lot going in here. The devs did a lot to try to push morale builds, which you'll actually see here right now. In fact, the Living Fog, long a meme, because he's just a meme. Living Fog has never been good. He's always been bad. And the problem is he literally did not really do anything special. He ran up, he hit you. He had a high chance to insanity, and his damage couldn't be reduced. Other than that, he didn't do anything special. He now has a new ability, Call of the Void, a single action use ability that summons down Devouring Void. Devouring Void by itself wouldn't really be that substantial and would probably be pretty ignorable, but even Devouring Void has seen two changes. One, this damage can no longer be reduced, period. It is 20 true damage, 20 pure damage, 20 damage to your soul. It will automatically hit you. You can steadfast through it and you can invulnerable it, but you cannot reduce it. In addition, you now also lose 3 morale when it hits you or when you're moving through it, and that morale can't be reduced either. So Devouring Void on the Living Fog is quite a powerful ability for this unit to be using. It also means that the tome itself that it comes from is significantly more powerful. Tome of Oblivion went from a meme build that really has one funny thing it can do to potentially being a build you could actually pick up in a real game. Living Fog, I'm not too sure is that great himself yet, but he's seen a pretty significant buff that has helped him out. He is still a mythic unit, so do pay attention to that. But overall, I would say he is significantly better, the Living Fog. So Tyrant Knight is significantly better, Living Fog is significantly better. That brings us to Exemplar. Now this unit has been in the game since launch, and it has been terrible since launch. It has literally, and I mean literally, never been good. Now, I'm gonna look up. Yeah, this was not in the original patch notes. So some of you guys who read the original patch notes probably... Was it really? They didn't do anything for the Exemplar? Exemplar. Nope, the Exemplar was not buffed in the original patch notes at all, but after that, he did see a bit of a buff here. Okay. So Exemplar, in a hotfix that happened like a few hours after the patch went live, had his health increased from 110 to 120. So he's a pretty tanky boy now. Just baseline 120 HP for a shield unit, that's quite good. Because he's, you know, shield units are generally meant to tank, right? Additionally, his speed was changed from fast to very fast. You know, that's funny. I know Exemplar was buffed in the original patch notes. I need to look this up because it's killing me inside. So his HP went up by 10. His movement speed went up by 8. He is now one of the fastest units in the entire game. By default, without any outside changes you can make, a 48 speed flying unit is literally the fastest unit you can do. Dude, I'm going crazy because I know he got buffed. Oh, because they typoed it in the original patch note. They called it Exemplar, not Exemplar. A instead of E. Okay, that's why I couldn't find it. I was going crazy, dude. Okay. In the first patch, Exemplar saw 3 different buffs, in fact. So this unit has definitely... He's gone from 0 to hero, right? The first buff is Embolden Allies no longer starts on cooldown. You can use this immediately when the battle starts. The second buff is he enters defense mode after using it. So turn 1, you can immediately start rallying your allies, stacking up in Strengthened. It is a 4-turn cooldown, so Strengthened will fall off unless you have like 2 Exemplars buffing people, right? But it will put you into defense mode, and you can use it immediately on turn 1 to start boosting up your morale if you're fighting a morale bomber, right? Additionally, he now gets graceful defense and gets 1 grace on entering defense mode. So in addition to being a very, literally the fastest champion by default movement speed allowances, unless you have some outside buffs or some special rules buffs, he is literally the fastest unit in the game. He is also one of the highest health units in the game. His resistance is only 4, but if you do try to hit him with any physical damage from the front, he probably won't take it. Sorry. Additionally, the double buff to Embolden Allies and Graceful Defense means that this unit is a hyper premier shield unit that can both dual... He has 2 jobs right now. He's basically a support tank, and he's also a damage dealer. His damage coming in with 18 damage, that's more damage than even the Pyre Templar has, although he does have default Zeal. This is one of the highest damage units in the game as well, so although he has no special rules on melee striking, it's just a melee strike, it doesn't ignite people, it doesn't light them on fire, it doesn't light the ground on fire, it doesn't condemn, nothing like that, right? It has no AoE like the Stormbringer, but just on its pure raw damage output, it is now, I think, the highest racial damage output in the game. Now, this is important because the Exemplar comes from a tome that generally just buffs battle mages. So, and I will talk about order tomes in its totality more, so I'm going to be retreading ground here in a later video. But with the Tome of Supremacy, also got a buff to the Anthem of Victory, reducing its combat casting points. So the Anthem of Victory, in addition to the Exemplar buff, means that this unit, tossing 1 Exemplar or maybe 2 into a battle mage line, because battle mages get buffed here with supreme magic. Tome of Supremacy, I'm going to go over more of this in a video on this, so I'm not going to spend too much time here. The Exemplar has just become a significantly more viable unit that we'll probably see some play. Earthshatter Engine, technically not a tier 4 unit, it comes from a tier 5 spell, and it's a siege unit, so you can't even build it regularly, but its slow speed has been removed, and its Earth Tremor now does 20 damage. So as a siege project coming from a tier 5 tome, it should be a little bit stronger and way more difficult to deal with. Nothing else to say than that one. Okay. Druid of the Cycle has seen another buff. Now, Druid of the Cycle, I'm going crazy by, because I swear to God, Life from Death always procced on Sacrificial Blight. But it says in the patch notes, Life from Death now triggers on killing friendly units. I can't remember if I gaslit myself into thinking Life from Death triggered on Sacrificial Blight, or if that's always been in the game. At either rate, the Druid of the Cycle has seen a little bit of buffs. We can't see the ranks here right now, but if Druid of the Cycle becomes a champion, Then the temporary hit points given from restart the cycle go to 100 from 70. The chance... Oh, here we go. Yeah, okay, three buffs here. Okay, so if it reaches champion rank, it full heals anyone it brings back to life instead of 70% HP, and it heals 100 instead of 70. So if this guy gets champion rank, he's a bit strong. In addition to that, life from death now just automatically procs whenever it kills any unit. I swear to God, it used to work like that. And it now gets a 90% chance to decay on its basic attack. Probably not enough to make Druid of the Cycle good still. Maybe its damage should go up a little bit, or maybe restart the cycle. I mean, I don't know. It's definitely a very interesting unit, and I'm going to experiment around with it a little bit more. Chaos Eater did not see a buff because it just didn't. Okay, Mirror Mimic is another unit that saw a rather substantial buff. I need to actually read the patch notes on this one, because even I won't remember everything they did. Okay, Mirror Mimic. The range of Mimic was increased from 4 to 6. Now, this is one of the worst units in the game going into this beta update, so they had to do a lot to actually get them to be viable. Mimic went from range 4 to range 6, so it can copy and actually be at a bit of a safer range. Mimic no longer has a cooldown. Once the Mirror Mimic becomes another unit, it will actually keep its unit rank instead of defaulting into a 0 unit rank. So if you vet up your Mirror Mimics, it will actually be quite good. You could actually become a better version of another unit. It now regains 30 HP when it transforms back into its Mimic state. Does it say that right here? I guess not. That's why I need to read the patch notes. And if it transforms into a unit that has more health than the Mirror Mimic has, it will copy that health additionally. So it's significantly better into copying enemy tanky units, generally better into copying everything, and just generally significantly better, period. Phase Beast has not entirely seen some buffs to itself, but it has seen some... Yeah, no, actually it did technically get a buff to itself. Okay, so number 1, displacement instead of randoming 3 around will now always teleport 3 away from an enemy. This means you can no longer randomly displace into terrible positions and just die. Pretty good consistency change. I like that a lot. Additionally, Phase has had its cooldown entirely removed, so the Phase Beast can teleport behind you and charge strike literally every turn now. So that seems rather deadly. Phasing enchantment from the tome itself was also buffed, but I'm probably going to get into that in the future. Basically, Tome Teleportation can now either build Phase Beasts for one build, but the phasing enchantment was also buffed for Battle Mage builds. Okay, so that about summarizes all the tier 4 unit buffs, but I did want to talk about a few more things before I wrap up this video. These are actually relevant. I'm not just trying to like elongate this video. Number 1, because this video's focus is kind of like on late game builds that are now viable, or late game builds that have been buffed into being significantly better. So I definitely think that at the very least this is relevant, even though I'll probably call this, maybe I should title it something different, even though at the opening stages of the video I say here are all the buffs to tier 4 units, right? Yeah, so number 1, Shrine of Smiting. Shrine of Smiting has seen a buff. A lot of people have mentioned that Shrine of Smiting was kind of getting power creeped. It has seen 2 different changes. Number 1, it now has Zeal by default. Well, actually, it's seen 3 changes. Number 1, it now has Zeal by default. Number 2, it now has Distracting Aura, so enemies become distracted at the start of its turn. So if enemies run into melee, they become distracted, allowing your allies to just flank and beat the shit out of them. Yeah, I mean, I just beat the shit out of them regularly, just hit them, right? It's a buff, right? A buff is a buff. Number 3, at champion rank, it now gets +1 range to Smiting Prayer Blast. I have to keep looking at the patch notes because sometimes even I can't remember everything. So Smiting Prayer Blast, being able to get +1 range at champion rank, means that the Shrine of Smiting can actually keep up with some of the power creep that's happened to range, and it will generally just make it a better artillery piece. So you can keep this around for your Zeal builds better, and maybe actually Pyre Templars can use the Shrine of Smiting instead of it kind of being not really that great of a unit. So Shrine of Smiting buff definitely will help Pyre Templars scale a little bit better. There was also, let's think here, the buff to Balor. Balor himself didn't actually get buffed. He himself is the exact same he's ever been. I really wish I'd make Chaos Brand 40 damage. Is there any way anyone at that company could just make Chaos Brand 40 damage? That'd be super cool. I would very much like that. Like, just smooth over this dude's damage. Make melee strike 12-12. Make Sunder the Earth 25-25, and make Chaos Brand 40. It's not like the Balor would be overpowered. Chaos Tomes are abysmal. And by the way, if we are talking about that, could we actually buff Warbreed? In like all honesty, could you push him to 40 movement speed or something? Push him to 4 resist at least. Like, it's just, it's not great. Warbreed's not very good, and it's kind of frustrating. But what did they buff for Balor then? Okay, so this is more of a tome change, but it's a tome change helping Balor a lot. And this is how it used to work. So some of you guys who've been playing this game for a lot are going, so that doesn't change anything. You're right, it doesn't really. It's just how it used to work. Fight for power, although it's not listed right here. You can now choose which unit you get from Fight for Power, so you no longer random half your Fight for Powers into Calamity Dragons. You will now get all of them being able to be Balors. So for those of you guys who just wanted to spam nothing but the big Demon Boy, that helps you out considerably. The Balor is now, you can just do full stacks of Balor again. Whether or not you would want to do that, that's on you, but at the very least, you can do it again. Okay, let's see, in my notes here, I have 2 more changes listed. I assure you, these are actually pretty good. The last one, or sorry, the second to last one, I don't know why I said that when I said 2 more changes listed. The second to last one is Inquisitor. Although technically not a late game unit, he has seen significant buffs to make him way more relevant. The first one is that he can bolt the Judgment every 3 turns, but now he can shoot crossbow every turn bolted Judgment is on cooldown. This makes him a full-on skirmishing unit that can just sit back at range and pound people into, well, Pound Town. Additionally, his melee strike has gone from 14 damage to 16 damage. It no longer has lower damage to compensate for the fact he already has Zeal. Zeal is now just a buff of the unit, which is good. That's a good change. So Skirmisher is technically only a tier 3 unit, but I was looking at this unit and I was like, okay, with these buffs, this unit is really strong. He was already halfway decent as a rush unit, but he fell off really hard. But the buffs to his tome and then the buffs to him being able to shoot at range every turn makes this unit, in addition to just looking really cool and having a badass crossbow, he's just way stronger. And I think Inquisitor rush builds or Inquisitor tempo builds will probably see more play, although they won't scale like into some late game giga builds. For sure, they'll still stay relevant even into the late game just because this unit will always be good. Now, the last thing I want to talk about then is beasts. Beasts have been bad literally since the first patch of the game where they nerfed them. And the devs have done some buffs to beasts to help them out a little bit. Now, what buffs have they done? The Call Greater Animal, as well as the Call of the Wild. I will do a video probably talking about beasts on its own, so I'm not going to go into it too much in this one. I just want to talk about the fact that these have been changed, that you can now select a unit to get from it, from 3 to 4 units. This means you can always choose to get a tier 4 animal from it. Because you can always choose to get a tier 4 animal from it, this makes it way more, well, consistent and allows you to actually deploy those tier 4 units. This means that beast builds no longer need to randomly go into either Astral for the Phase Beast or into Chaos for the Infernal Juggernaut, which was really awkward and not really, like, consistent. This means that beast builds can now just go Tome of Vigor, and at tier 3, they can now just start getting tier 3 animals. Or sorry, I should say at tier 3, they can now just start getting tier 4 animals. Now, I have not personally used it. Unfortunately, I do not literally have unlimited time. Those of you guys who watch me probably have noticed that I'm spending more time than you possibly think I have making these videos while also streaming. But at any rate, I've not personally tried this, but this should mean that you can pull the White Wolf, you can pull the Dire Bear, the Ice Spider Matriarch, the Hunter Spider Matriarch. These 4 should now be pullable. I'm not sure if Phoenix is pullable. Of these, of course, the Ice Spider Matriarch, although it did get nerfed, it no longer inflicts slow if your effect fails. because it used to inflict frozen, and if frozen failed, it would inflict slowed, so that was really strong. Now if it's unsuccessful, it inflicts status vulnerability. That was a big change to all these effects, because they were generally seen as kind of oppressive to get automatic slow. But at any rate, Ice Spider Matriarch is a pretty decent late game unit. Dire Bear is pretty forgettable, and I have nothing to say on Dire Bear, as well as the White Wolf, which is generally just a very high damage fighter. Maybe not the tankiest, but beasts have never been very good. They've always been a tempo build, much like Inquisitor, and giving them more ability to scale and more ability to actually, you know, participate in the late game. Basically, even though these are early game builds, it kind of sucked that, like, if you didn't win the game by like turn 40, you would just fall off a cliff, and now you don't just fall off a cliff. It also means that beast builds can scale a bit better because they don't need to do extraordinarily weird, janky build paths, picking up tomes they would really never actually want. So that's a video. That's how the devs are kind of increasing, not kind of, they're definitely increasing build viability. This expansion looks to be pretty good, if for no other reason that I think the free patch that's coming alongside it is really, really, really good. So the free patch is definitely going to do a lot. So let me know what you guys think. Do these buffs look good enough? Do they not look good enough? I certainly think most of them look good enough. There's a couple I'm a bit worried about, and as I mentioned, I would prefer if some of these chaos units actually get buffed, because chaos units are like the weakest. So I think what they could do for now is just like band-aid buff some of these chaos units, like just band-aid buff up Balor, band-aid buff up the Warbreed for now, and then when you actually do a chaos expansion, because I'm going to assume there's going to be you know, an Act 3 expansion. I mean, the game's only getting, it's not like the most popular game ever, but it's only getting more and more popular as time goes on, right? And I definitely think that going forward into the future, that you could, you know, you could undo some of these buffs or something if it proves to be too much. But for now, I think Chaos seems to be the only tomes that literally nobody is going to go into. And could use just like a little bit of a buff. Maybe Chaos Eater, maybe push him to like 140 HP or 5/5 defenses. I don't know. Anyway, thank you all for watching. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, everybody. And as always, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.